Pierre Berton, My Country. Chapter 11. Ned Hanlan and the Golden Age of Sculling. Was there ever a champion like Ned Hanlan? I doubt it. He is one of those athletic paragons who, like meteors, dazzling in their brilliance, flash across the sky only to flare out as suddenly as they burst forth. Hanlan of Toronto, the fastest sculler in the world, almost certainly the fastest sculler in history. All but one of his records still stand after a century. Is it possible that he achieved it all in just 10 years? Consider his history. Champion of Burlington Bay at 19, champion of Canada at 22, champion of America at 23, champion of England at 24, champion of the world at 25, beaten 4 years later at an age when most men are still clambering slowly towards the crest of their careers. Hanlan was finished as a world champion before he reached 30, but what a champion he was. He was to sculling what Roger Bannister was to the mile run. His triumphant decade, 1874 to 84, was one of those glorious accidents when the accomplishment of an athlete and the popularity of a sport coincide and enhance one another. Hanlan made sculling. It might also be said that he unmade it, for he was the de Gaulle of oarsmen. None who followed had his flair. Sculling is not the world's most exciting sport. It lacks the speed of skiing, the danger of sports car racing, the drama of the great spectator sports. But Hanlan had the showmanship and the theater, the pure pizzazz, to turn it into a spectacle. When Hanlan rode, the world turned out to watch. In Canada, crowds of 10 or 20,000 came to see him row, more than turned up for Grey Cup matches in a later century when the country was 5 times as large. He outmatched his opponents, could and did run rings around them, but not for him the long lead and the dull finish. Better to counterfeit collapse, draw a gasp from the crowd or make it laugh, circle back from the finish line, stage any number of bravado gestures to bring applause from the spectators and groans from his rivals. Anything to juice up the audience. Better to row just hard enough to make it look like a race. Only once in his 10 years' string of victories did Hanlan need to go all out for speed, and that was on the remarkable day when he rode alone after his opponent's shell had been mysteriously sabotaged. To prove that he had had nothing to do with the crime, to show that he could beat any man alive on the water. Ned Hanlan rode a 5-mile course at a speed that had never before been attained and has never since been surpassed. Hanlan's style and showmanship brought him an adulation that has rarely been equaled. He was remarkably good-looking, with regular features and curly hair so fashionable in the engraved advertisements of the day. The handsomest gentleman I or anyone has ever seen, to quote the words of a contemporary. In all the accounts of the period of Hanlan and his victories, there is scarcely a snide word written about him. He was undeniably likable, a man apparently without enemies, the perfect sports hero. Of the private Hanlan we know very little, except that he was happily married in 1877 and the father of 8 children. The glimpses we have of him are the public ones, and they are all remarkably serene. In all his appearances, he seemed to be a man without neuroses or observable weaknesses, unless one counts his propensity to clown during a race. His private life must have been equally untroubled, since nobody apparently thought it worthy writing about.